You've been outspoken in your belief that the defense industry is out of control and too often guiding policy in this country. I'm curious what you make of the Biden administration announcing that they are sending these air defense systems, I should say, these THAAD systems to Israel, along with 100 American personnel. I imagine you might disagree with that?
Well, look, I think that the question is the root cause of how we got to where we were in the first place is weakness in the White House. You look right now, Americans wonder the same thing the rest of the world wonders when they look at the American White House. Who's really in charge? And there isn't a clear answer to that question. And when you have that vacuum of leadership, that's when you see Russia invading Ukraine. That's when you see turmoil again in the Middle East. When we were on the verge of major breakthroughs in the back of the Abraham Accords under President Trump's leadership, now look at where we are today on the brink of a major regional war. You look at other parts of the world, Chinese aggression towards Taiwan. The instability has risen over the last 4 years, and I think it's not a coincidence that it coincides with exactly the period where we had weak leadership from the White House. You talked earlier about Kamala Harris being separate from Joe Biden, conveniently so. She's the person who said she was the last person in the room when many of those foreign policy decisions were made, including that disastrous botched exit from Afghanistan, which I do think was the root cause for a lot of these foreign policy disasters that have followed, was the execution of that exit from Afghanistan, bringing the military first out rather than last out, leaving from a civilian Air Force base rather than a military Air Force base. Kamala Harris, on her own terms, does own those decisions as the proverbial last person in the room when those decisions were made. And I think a lot of these foreign policy catastrophes, yes, including the instability in the Middle East, can trace itself to that weakness of decision-making. And that's why I do think that Donald Trump, if you're going to pick between the people who are running for U.S. president, who's going to keep us out of World War III, I think Donald Trump is unambiguously the correct answer to that question.
It's fair to say that analysts have pointed out that progress that was made with the Abraham Accords and the potential for Israel to normalize relations with Saudi Arabia is ultimately what led to Hamas's attack. Nevertheless, sir, I do have one more question for you. This weekend, Donald Trump said that he expects chaos on Election Day from the enemy from within. He talked about radical left lunatics. He suggested that those folks should be handled by the National Guard, possibly by the military. Who do you think he was referring to?
Well, the fact of the matter is we have a U.S. president that in a period of 2 months has been the target of assassination attempts with disastrous security failures leading up to it. That's unconscionable in the United States of America. We're skating on thin ice. And I do think that Donald Trump, even after that event at Butler, it was admirable. He could have gone in many different directions. Ordinary people would have. But to call for calm and peace and a plume, I do think that that's what we need in a moment where we are skating on thin ice as a country. I hope those two incidents are by far the worst of what we see this election season. And we're able to move forward to a more united country where we can say, you know what, we may disagree like hell at the dinner table, but we can still get together and have dinner at the end of it. That's the America we miss. And Donald Trump, people know him as somebody who can fight. But I also am betting on him as a president who can actually unite, as somebody who has literally taken fire in a way that we have not seen in a generation in American politics. And if we get it right in this moment, I hope we don't see it for many more generations to come. So who's he referring to? As somebody who's been shot at many times? There are a lot of lunatics out there who are carrying out heinous acts. That needs to end. We need to restore peace. We need to restore civility. We need to restore national self-confidence in a way that we're lacking today. And I do think that a unifying landslide, that's what I'm rooting for, of a kind we had in 1980 or 1984 with Reagan. I think that is a rare opportunity we have to unite and strengthen our country. And I think that's why we're working hard through the finish line to make that happen.